Alright, so good day, my fellow international relations student. Good day to you, me. Thank you for the chance. And in this occasion, I'm going to give you a presentation about my review of related literature, which will be have four topics in accordance with the variables that I've showed to you in the slides right now. And without any further ado, let's begin the presentation. Here are the list of reviewed literature today that I'm going to discuss today. All right, so in the first topic, we'll review about the concept of great power. After I read several journal articles as well as books that I find relevant to my topic, I found out that the consensus that all of the literature that I've read agreed that the acknowledgement of state as great power also comes with a bunch of responsibilities that needs to be executed by state. I also found there consensus between some of the literature that I've read because all of them agreed that in order to be acknowledged as global power, state must have several required resources. However, in defining the resources, these literature made several differences. For instance, literature stated that state needs to have financial and technological abilities to lead other states in solving global issues. And on the other hand, the other literature emphasized the importance of soft power resources because they believe that in order to lead, that should have the ability to influence people globally as well as contract states globally. That's why some of the literature agree that self power resources is very important. And while other journals also emphasize the importance of military ability, they consider that the main requirement of states to be considered as great power is to have a big military capability that could project military project outside their area to signal other states of its relevancy as global power. And that's why I consider that this is a near consensus within the literature because all of them agree that to be a great power, states should have several abilities, but in defining the abilities, they have several differences that I have elaborated to you guys. And well, let's talk about the disagreement now. Most of the disagreement that I found is in the question of why does the global power willing to lead the international community in solving global issues or dispute? And Bernstein here argued that global power do this initiatively because they are trying to prevent the spillover effects of the issue that could also bring negative impact to their country. For instance, the issue of global terror, environmental problems, and so on and so forth. When great power trying to counter this problem initiatively, it is because they are trying to prevent the spillover effects. They don't want to be affected by the negative impacts of these global issues. And Konka's argument, also in line with Bernstein journal article, Konka believed that global power initiatively do this because they feel responsible and obligated to do so because they have been receiving special right and privilege from the current order. So that's why they voluntarily do it. And on the other hand, Hadley Bull argues that great power wants to lead in the settlement or solving the problems because they have interest on it. They want to be a global hegemon by proving that they are able to do so. Besides from they want to be global hegemon, Bull also emphasized that they want to maintain its order as global hegemon by proving its relevancy if they already become a global hegemon. And Bukovansky argument also in line with Hadley Bull and opposing the Stephen Bernstein and Konka's argument. Bukovansky made Bull's agreement clearer by explaining why in numerous issues there have always been different states that lead the issue, not only one state that lead every issue. Why is that so? Bukovansky emphasized the reason why there are different states in leading the issue because the great power has interests, also in line with Hadley Bull argument. And Bukovansky emphasized that the reason why there are different states who lead different issue is because maybe the states that does not want to bother that much on that particular issue because they would not get interest from taking care of the issue. So to illustrate to you, imagine about the climate change issue, for instance. It is a global issue, right? And you know that US is almost leading in every global issue, but they refuse to lead in climate change issue, right? Like they withdraw from Paris Climate Agreement, right? This might be because US think that climate change issue is not that beneficial for US to be taken care of. So that's why they don't want to lead in that issue. So this is the areas of disagreement that I found in the literature. And for the gaps of the literature, the reviewed literature has given me a prior knowledge on the concept of great power, or great power and its responsibility and also its motive to lead. However, it is still unclear why global power has the interest to intervene trade-related dispute. And let's next to the second topic that I'm going to discuss, which is the international organization. So based on all of the literature that I've read, all of them agreed that the establishment of international organizations always follow the trend of international relations trend and global issues trend as well. For instance, if there's an economic crisis, the international community would try to find ways to counter the problem by creating institutions. For instance, like the International Monetary Fund that was resulted from economic problems after Second World War. And also, besides from the first consensus, I also found the second consensus, which is the international organizations facilitate smaller states to be heard by putting their stances in international organization so that the international community would understand how the smaller states stances. So that is the consensus that I found in the reviewed literature. And I also found near consensus because all of the reviewed literature that I've read agreed that international organization could diminish uncertainties and unpredictability of states' aggressive behavior. However, there are several differences within the reviewed literature. And in here, I found out that John Mercimer considered that even though the international organization has diminished uncertainties and unpredictability of states' aggressive behavior, that it is not international organization who do it alone, but it is because of the intergovernmental actor, the state actor behind the international organization. John Mercimer agreed that international organization only a platform, not the main actor that could reduce states' aggressiveness. Mercimer emphasized that it is the encourage from the member states who is the only reason that it could diminish states' aggressiveness. And contrarily, Bandari, in his journal article, considered that international organization is highly influenced to manage states' behavior. So in here, we found a consensus that international organization could diminish state aggressiveness, but John Mercimer thinks that international organization is not the main actor. Contrarily, Bandari thinks that international organization is highly influenced. So Bandari mentioned that the presence of international organization has paved the way to diminish the state's aggressiveness. So for the area of disagreement, I also found that mostly this journal article argued in the effectiveness of the international organization itself and also its relevancy. For instance, like Mercimer considered that international organization is fundamentally ineffective due to its limited ability to prevent state to pursue its interests by engaging in power politics. Mercimer believed that even with the presence of international organization, there are still several states who cannot controlled by international organizations due to its non-compliances. And Bandari always, again, not in line with Mercimer because he argued that international organization is highly effective to prevent conflict by providing a forum where every state's voices are equal that could prevent state from egoism in order to achieve collective interests. And Rajan here mentioned in his journal article challenging Bandari, Rajan criticized international organization and called it as unequal by giving privilege to bigger states. And of course, it is not in line with Bandari because Bandari stated that international organization is a forum where every state's voices are equal. On the other hand, Rajan believed that the voices is not equal. Why is that so? Why Rajan consider like this? It is because the inequality that happens in international organization. Rajan gave several examples. For instance, the veto power in UNSC, for example, only bigger state that has the ability to veto the decision, right? Only the P5. And not only that, the voting power in International Monetary Fund as well. So the reason why Rajan emphasized that international organizations sometimes unequal, unlike what Bandari mentioned before. In here, also, Styrian 2013 counter Mercimer argument. Mercimer argument previously mentioned that international organization is ineffective. Styrian, on the other hand, argues that even though international organization cannot fully ensure state compliance, but it has paved the way for international cooperation. For instance, it has built numerous economic cooperation for collective interest and also cooperation in handling global threat. So Styrian here mentioning the importance of international organization in also its achievement. And next, please, we come to the third topic here, which is the World Trade Organization and its dispute settlement. From all of, we found also consensus from all of the review literature agreed that the establishment of World Trade Organization was a product of globalization that motivated the states to trade with each other in order to fasten the production processes. The consensus that I found also stated that there was a huge increase on international trade due to the trade regulation that made the state easier to trade with one another. However, there are two disagreements that I found here, and I will elaborate them one by one. But first, we're going to talk about the WTO's principle. So in here, I found that Mike Moore, on his journal article, argued that the principles and provisions of WTO succeed to ensure fair and equal trade between WTO's member states. However, this argument by Mike Moore is countered by CORE. CORE disagree with Mike Moore and consider that WTO is not fair towards its member states due to its bias towards the developed countries. He also gave an example on his journal article. CORE mentioned that developed countries are able to maintain high import duties on certain products, but developing countries are not able to do so. Moreover, CORE also gave another example. The another example is because the rich countries could maintain its high tariff protection on agriculture, but the middle lower income countries could not to do so. So these are the reasons, these are the example that CORE stated in his journal article that clearly shows the gap between the developed and developing countries. that court consider that it is not unfair and challenges Mike Moore argument before that stated that WTO succeeded to ensure fair and equal trade between WTO's member states. And we proceed to the next disagreement, which is came from its dispute settlement mechanism. An article journal written by Payne mentioned that WTO's dispute settlement body could act as an arena for voice mechanism and also platform for third parties to be heard. And here, Payne emphasized that WTO dispute settlement body not only could act as an area for dialogue between the disputing parties, but also the non-disputing parties could join to oversee the dispute settlement, which is very, very transparent. This could help them to observe the dispute as well as learning from the dispute itself. Within his journal, Payne also emphasized that WTO's dispute settlement body would act as an independent actor who would examine the case fairly and equally without leaning towards a party. The argument made by Payne, also supported by Al-Faqih, he argued that WTO's dispute settlement body is very effective and efficient because it has a surveillance system that could oversee the member states' compliance towards the provisions of WTO. However, Al-Faqih and Payne argument is countered by journal article by Safar. Safar here argued that differently with the aforementioned journal article, Safar, on the other hand, mentioned that the dispute settlement body is definitely very, very weak and lack of surveillance on its implementation of resolution. Why is it so? Shaffer argued that it is not because WTO is not able to ensure the implementation of its resolution. And Shaffer argument also supported by LIDA. LIDA mentioned as well as criticizing the World Trade Organization dispute settlement body and called it as ineffective because these processes to settle dispute took very long period of time due to the lack of surveillance and its weak enforcement that eventually leads to the uncertainty of the resolution implementation. So that's it for the third topic. And now last but not least, we came to our last topic, which is the banana trade dispute between European Union, ACP countries, and South American states. After I read several journal articles, I have 4 findings here. Let me begin first with the U.S. role. I found that the U.S. role in this case is imposing huge trade sanction worth to more than 100 millions of US dollar that eventually succeed to make EU to consider its action, its non-compliance. So basically, EU was not compliant towards the WTO until US put sanction on them that succeed to make them consider its non-compliances. In here also, I found that on the journal article that elite orientation was the US's motive. And in here, Gil and Baldia journal article mentioned that the banana companies came from South American states is originated came from the US. And for example, like one of them is the most famous banana companies named Chiquita. And Chiquita is very close to USS regime at the time when George H.W. Bush became the president. And in here also, the journal also mentioned that Chiquita has been supporting the election and has been donating huge amount of money to the domestic politics of US. So therefore, the journal argued that it is the elite orientation that encouraged the US government to intervene in this dispute. And not only US's motive, we also get from the journal article by Gil and Baldia about the motive of EU favorable towards the ACP countries. In here, Gil and Baldia mentioned that the reason behind EU discriminative banana regime because EU consider such special treatment toward ACP countries would create dependency of ACP countries towards EU market. So that's why EU is trying to be favorable in front of the ACP countries because they want to create dependency of ACP countries towards the EU market. The second reason here, strengthen EU's position in the global politics. Because these ACP countries consist of lots of states, and if they are engaging very close to EU will have like supported in the decision-making process of international organization. That's the argument of Gil and Baldia. And not only that, the journal article also mentioned that EU wants to contribute on the development of smaller states, ACP countries, which consist of EU's former European colonies. So basically, they have like this historical belonging and background. I mean. And for the latest finding that I found here is the loopholes in settlement process. So in here, why is the case is very long to be settled? It is the journal article argued that EU's non-compliance made the dispute very long to be settled. And not only that, the weak enforcement of WTO is also the main contributor that made this dispute is very long to be settled. Why is that so? Because the lack of surveillance and its weak enforcement eventually leads to the uncertainty of the resolution implementation by European Union, who doesn't want to comply with the WTO dispute settlement body. And last but not least, we are going to give you the gaps in the literature here. The reviewed literature succeed to give insight about U.S. role, the interests of both parties, as well as the loophole settlement processes. However, it has not answered the question regarding how could WTO work simultaneously with global leader in order to solve the dispute. But this question will be examined in my analysis later on the research. And that's it. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And I'm looking forward for any constructive comments that would mean a lot for me. Thank